witnessed my daughter's childhood one paycheck at a time. Back then, I would have told you it was worth it. I spent 35 years driving a truck across the country because I wanted my family to have a better life than the one I grew up with. 3 years after I retired, my daughter looked across a coffee shop table and quietly said, "You were a good provider, but I don't remember having a dad." I wish I could tell you she was wrong. I can't. My name's Frank. I'm 68 years old, and I spent most of my life behind the wheel of a long-haul truck. For years, I believed a father's job was simple: pay the bills, keep food on the table, make sure the mortgage got paid. Everything else, I figured we'd have time for later. Turns out later has a way of showing up before you're ready. Every Monday morning followed the same routine. I'd back my rig into the driveway before sunrise while my wife, Linda, packed sandwiches for the road. Emily would come out wearing oversized pajamas, hugging the same stuffed rabbit she'd slept with since she was 2 years old. She'd stand on the porch waving until my truck disappeared around the corner. I'd honk twice, every Monday. I can still hear that horn. What I don't remember is when she stopped coming outside to wave. I don't remember the last Monday. I just know it happened. Driving a truck makes it easy to believe you're doing something important. You leave before everyone else wakes up. You get home after they've gone to bed. Every Friday, a paycheck shows up. The mortgage gets paid. The lights stay on. The refrigerator stays full. You look around and think, I'm doing my job. So when dispatch asks if you can take one more load, you say yes. One more trip, one more weekend, one more month, one more year. Looking back, I don't think I ever chose work over my daughter. I just kept convincing myself there'd always be another chance. Linda used to slip little notes into my lunch cooler. Nothing fancy. Drive safe. Emily scored her first goal today. School play next Thursday. Sometimes she'd include a picture she'd taken that week. I'd smile, set it beside my logbook, tell myself I'd ask Emily all about it when I got home. Sometimes I remembered. A lot of times, another trip came first. One evening, I called from a truck stop outside Indianapolis. Emily answered. She couldn't have been older than 8. "Dad? Hey, sweetheart. You coming home Friday?" "I should be." There was a little pause. "You said that last Friday." "I know." "I'm trying." Another pause. "Okay." Then she handed the phone back to Linda. That was it. No tears, no complaints. At the time, I thought she understood. Now, I think she was already learning not to expect too much. Whenever I made it home, I tried to make those weekends count. I'd bring home little souvenirs from wherever I'd been. A snow globe, a carved wooden bear, a funny keychain from some roadside gift shop. Emily always smiled. She hugged me. Then she'd drift back into conversations with her mom about school, friends, teachers. Conversations that had happened while I was somewhere between Missouri and Nebraska. I didn't notice it happening. Little by little, I became the guy who brought presents. Not the father who knew what was going on in his daughter's life. The years moved faster than I realized. Emily learned to drive, graduated high school, finished college, got married. I remember sitting at her wedding reception, listening to people tell stories about her. Her college roommate knew what made her nervous. Her maid of honor remembered stories from middle school. Even the photographer joked with her like they'd known each other for years. Everyone at those tables seemed to know pieces of my daughter's life that I'd never heard before. I smiled, laughed when everyone else laughed, clapped when everyone else clapped. But on the drive home, I couldn't stop asking myself one question. When had she become someone I barely knew? Linda noticed before I admitted it. "You've been quiet," she said. "I'm just tired." She looked out through the windshield for a few seconds. "I think you're sad." I laughed. I'm fine. She didn't argue. She simply reached across the console and squeezed my hand. She always knew me better than I knew myself. We lost Linda 4 years later. Cancer. The doctors thought we had a year and a half. We got 11 months. After she was gone, the house changed in ways I never expected. The television stayed off. The porch swing hardly moved. Some mornings I'd pour 2 cups of coffee before remembering there was only one of us left. 3 years later, I retired. People congratulated me. You'll finally have time. Now you can enjoy life. I smiled every time. Truth was, I wasn't sure what kind of life I was supposed to enjoy. One rainy afternoon, I walked into the garage looking for a socket wrench. Instead, I found 3 plastic storage bins stacked against the back wall. Linda's handwriting was still on the lids. One was filled with Emily's school things. Another held old family keepsakes. The third was packed with things Linda had quietly saved over the years. I figured I'd spend an hour sorting through everything. Maybe I'd put together something nice for Emily. I carried the first bin to my workbench. There were report cards, soccer ribbons, construction paper projects, old school programs. Then I opened a large envelope with my name written across the front in thick purple crayon. I frowned. I didn't remember ever seeing it. Inside was a Father's Day card. A little girl had drawn herself holding hands with a man in a baseball cap. Below the drawing, she'd written a short message. I won't repeat the words. I don't need to. The moment I read them, I realized she'd made that card hoping I'd be there the following year. I never was. Rain tapped against the garage door. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower started. I opened another envelope, then another. School programs, birthday invitations, certificates. Little pieces of a childhood I'd missed one ordinary day at a time. None of them had been hidden from me. Linda had simply saved them. Maybe she believed that someday I'd finally slow down enough to look. She was right. She just wasn't alive to see it. I sat down on the old stool beside my workbench. For the first time since retiring, I stopped wondering where all those years had gone. I was holding them in my hands. I didn't go back into the garage for almost a week. Every time I walked past those storage bins, I'd find something else that suddenly seemed more important. I'd mow the lawn, wash the truck, straighten a shelf that didn't need straightening. Anything except open another envelope. I guess part of me already knew what I'd find. The following Tuesday, I called Emily. The phone rang long enough that I almost hung up. Hi, Dad. Hey. You okay? Yeah. I was wondering if maybe you'd have time for coffee this weekend. She was quiet for a moment. I can do Saturday. There wasn't much excitement in her voice, but she didn't say no. At my age, you learn to appreciate small things. I got to the coffee shop about 20 minutes early. Some habits never leave you. When you've spent decades delivering freight, being late feels like you've already failed before the day begins. I ordered black coffee and watched people come and go through the front window. When Emily walked in, she reminded me so much of Linda that it caught me off guard. Same careful smile, same way of pushing her hair behind one ear, same calm expression whenever she wasn't sure what to say. We hugged. It wasn't uncomfortable, it just felt careful, like two people trying not to make each other uneasy. For a while, we talked about ordinary things: her job, my tomatoes, the weather, the old neighborhood. Neither of us wanted to be the first one to bring up the past. Finally, I reached into the paper bag beside my chair. I found something. I slid the old Father's Day card across the table. Emily looked down and smiled. I haven't seen this in years. I never saw it. I know. You knew? She nodded. Mom saved everything. I think she believed you'd eventually have time. I looked at the card again. I wish he'd just handed them to me. Emily shook her head. I don't. You don't? If she had, you probably would have felt guilty. That sounded exactly like Linda. Even after all these years, she was still protecting me. After a while, I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since I'd opened that first envelope. Were you angry with me? Emily looked out the window before answering. No, I frowned. No? I was disappointed. She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. When you're little, disappointment doesn't happen all at once. It happens one promise at a time. Neither of us spoke. Then she quietly added, I don't blame you anymore. For a second, I felt relieved. Maybe we'd finally found our way back. Then she looked down at the table. But I stopped expecting you. That sentence hurt more than anything else she'd said. Not because it was cruel, because it wasn't. It sounded like she'd accepted it years ago. I used to wait by the front window on Fridays, she said. You'd tell Mom you were coming home. Sometimes you did. Sometimes the phone rang. And sometimes, she shrugged. Nothing. I'd tell myself, maybe next week. She gave a small smile. Eventually, I stopped waiting. I looked into my coffee. To me, those Fridays had blended together, one delivery after another, one highway after another. To Emily, every Friday had been another promise. I just hadn't known I was breaking it. The drive home felt longer than usual. The radio stayed off. I kept thinking about something she'd said. It happens one promise at a time. I realized children don't measure love the way adults do. They don't count overtime. They don't remember mortgage payments. They remember who showed up. The following Sunday, she invited me over for lunch. I parked in front of her house and sat in my truck for almost a minute before getting out. I suddenly felt like a man walking into someone else's family gathering. Emily opened the front door before I reached the porch. Come on in. The house smelled like fresh bread and cinnamon. Family pictures covered one wall. Vacations, birthdays, school portraits, years of memories. I stood there looking at them, realizing how many moments had happened while I was somewhere on the interstate. Then a little boy came around the corner carrying a plastic dinosaur. He stopped when he saw me, looked at Emily, then back at me. Mom, who's that? Everything inside me went quiet. Emily rested a hand on his shoulder. That's Grandpa. Noah smiled politely. Hi. Not the smile a little boy gives someone he knows. The smile he gives someone his mother trusts. Hi, Noah. He nodded once and wandered back into the living room without another thought. I watched him go. In that moment, I realized something that should have been obvious. I'd spent years becoming a stranger to my own daughter. Now I had the chance to become a stranger to my grandson, too. And this time, I didn't have 35 years to fix it. Emily handed me a mug of coffee. You okay? I looked at Noah playing on the living room floor, then back at her. No. It was the first completely honest answer I'd given in a long time. After Noah wandered back into the living room, neither Emily nor I spoke for a while. The dishwasher hummed in the kitchen. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Ordinary sounds. Funny how ordinary sounds become so loud when nobody knows what to say. Finally, I looked at her. Can I ask you something? She nodded. When did you stop believing I'd come home? She held her coffee with both hands. I don't know. It wasn't one day. It was a lot of Fridays. She looked toward the living room. When I was little, I'd sit by the front window after school. Every truck that drove past, I thought it might be yours. I lowered my eyes. Mum never told me to stop waiting. She always said maybe. Emily smiled sadly. So I waited. She was quiet for a few seconds. One day I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not because I stopped loving you. She slowly shook her head. Because hoping hurt too much. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to argue with. No explanation would have made those years disappear. For the first time in my life, I understood something I'd never wanted to admit. I hadn't just missed moments. I'd taught my daughter not to count on me. A few minutes later, Noah ran into the kitchen holding a dinosaur with one loose leg.
Grandpa,
I looked up.
can you fix him?
I smiled. I think so. We sat on the living room floor. It took less than a minute. One tiny screw, a small screwdriver. That was all.
There,
Noah turned the dinosaur over in his hands.
you fix stuff.
I used to fix trucks. He looked at me for a second.
Trucks are bigger.
They sure are. He laughed and ran back to playing. Emily had been watching from the doorway. You always were good at fixing things. I looked at the little screwdriver still lying on the floor. Just not always the things that mattered. A couple of weeks later, Emily came over to my house. It was the first time she'd been there since Linda passed away. She walked slowly through the living room. Nothing had changed very much. The same furniture, the same family pictures, the same porch swing outside the front window. You've kept everything. I guess I wasn't ready to change it. She nodded. I understand. Later we ended up in the garage. The storage bins were still sitting on the workbench. Emily opened one and started smiling as she pulled things out. I forgot about this. What is it? My 4th grade science project. A minute later, she found something else. And this, she laughed. I can't believe Mom saved all of it. She saved everything. Emily looked around the garage. I think she believed we'd all have more time. Neither of us said anything after that, because we both knew how that turned out. I leaned against the workbench. Can I tell you something? She looked at me. Of course. I always said I worked because we needed the money. We did. Yeah, we did. I took a slow breath. But that wasn't the whole story. She stayed quiet, out on the road. I always knew what to do. If something went wrong, I fixed it. If there was a problem, I figured it out. I always knew where I belonged. I looked around the garage. When I came home, I wasn't so sure. I'd already missed birthdays. I'd missed school plays. I'd missed ordinary Tuesdays. I didn't know how to walk back into your life without feeling like I'd already failed. I smiled to myself. So when another run came along, I took it. It was easier. I finally looked at her. I told myself I was providing for my family. The truth is, sometimes work was the place where I hid. Emily didn't interrupt. She let the silence sit between us. Then she quietly said, I think I always knew that. You did? A little. She folded her arms. I never wanted expensive Christmas presents. I never cared about the souvenirs. I just wanted to look into the audience once and know my dad was sitting there. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was dramatic, because it was so simple. When she got ready to leave, I walked her to the front porch. She opened the driver's door. I stopped her. "Can I ask one more thing?" She turned around. "Sure. Do you think I can still be part of Noah's life?" She looked across the yard before answering. "You can." I waited. "But not because you say you will." She smiled. "If you keep showing up." The next Wednesday, I parked outside Noah's school 15 minutes early. The bell rang. Kids poured out, carrying backpacks almost as big as they were. Then I heard somebody yell, "Grandpa!" I looked up. Noah came running toward me with the biggest smile I'd ever seen on his face. He grabbed my hand. "We getting ice cream?" I laughed. "That's still the plan." Wednesday became our day. Every week. No excuses. No canceled plans. No promises I couldn't keep. Sometimes we stopped for ice cream. Sometimes we worked in the garage together. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch eating peanut butter crackers while he told me everything that had happened at school. This time, I listened. Really listened. Months later, after dropping Noah off at home, I walked back into my garage. The workbench looked different somehow. Not because anything had changed, because I had. I looked at the old Father's Day card resting beside a fresh drawing Noah had given me that afternoon. One reminded me of the years I'd never get back. The other reminded me that some doors don't reopen, but new ones can. I turned off the garage light, closed the door behind me, and walked back into the house. I spent 35 years trying to build a better future for my family. It turned out the future they remembered was the time I wasn't there.